The public humiliation began at my family home, where I returned from 3 years of military service with diamond ring in my pocket and found my fiancée in a wedding dress beside my own uncle. The specific betrayal was not only that Claire had married Victor Reed while I was deployed, but that my family watched him introduce her as his wife while I stood at the gate like a ghost who had come home too late. The marriage crisis they thought would break me became the first battlefield I chose. With discipline, because Victor's greatest misjudgment was believing a soldier would come home with only anger and no records. Chapter 1. I came home with a ring. I came home with a diamond ring in my pocket. That was the part people always forgot later. They remembered the wedding. They remembered my uncle's smile. They remembered Claire's white dress. They remembered the way I stood at the edge of the lawn while every face of my family turned pale. But before any of that, there was the ring. I bought it 2 weeks before my discharge papers were finalized. Nothing huge, nothing vulgar. A clean oval diamond set in white gold, simple enough for Claire to wear every day, bright enough to carry 3 years of waiting. I had saved for it from my military pay, the same pay I had been sending home every month to help protect the Reed family house and stabilize the small transport company my father left behind. I was 29 years old, newly discharged from the Army, and foolish enough to believe that loyalty worked the same way at home as it did in uniform. In the Army, a promise had weight. You showed up, you held the line, you carried your own gear. If a man beside you trusted you to cover his blind side, you did not decide halfway through that someone more convenient had appeared. Home was supposed to be easier than that. I learned it was not. My name is Mason Reed. 3 years earlier, I left my town because my father had died with debts tied to the old house and Reed Family Transport the company he built with 2 trucks and a lifetime of stubbornness. I could have stayed and watched everything fall apart slowly. Instead, I enlisted partly because I needed structure, partly because I needed income, and partly because I believed leaving for a purpose was different from running. Claire Whitman promised she would wait. We had grown up 3 streets apart. We knew each other before love had language. She had seen me at my father's funeral, standing beside the casket, with my hands clenched so tightly. My knuckles went white. She had held my face between her hands at night and said, "Go if you have to. I will be here when you come back." I believed her. My uncle Victor Reed said the same thing in his own way. "Serve your country." He told me before I left, "I will look after the house, the company. And Claire, your father will want you to have a chance." Victor was my father's younger brother. He had always been around the edges of our family business. Not quite trusted by my father, but never fully pushed out. He was charming when he needed to be, practical when watched, and just wounded enough by life to make people forgive him too quickly. I made him my temporary agent for bill payments. That was the first mistake. Not because giving someone power is always foolish. Sometimes duty requires delegation. The mistake was assuming blood meant safety. For 3 years, Isen Muneyoma, every month, part of my pay went to Victor for the mortgage horrors, business debts, insurance, maintenance on the company trucks, and taxes on the old house. Another part went to Claire in a separate account we called the home fund. She said she wanted to start planning our life. I liked imagining that account growing while I was away. It made deployment feel less like absence and more like building. I kept every receipt because the Army teaches you to document pay stubs, transfer confirmations, emails, deployment records, leave denials, video call logs, letters sent through military mail every month, saved and backed up. At the time, I thought it was habit. Later, it became a weapon. My contact with Claire changed during the 3rd year. At first, we spoke whenever time zones and duty allowed. Then calls got shorter. Messages came later. She said she was tired. Her mother was sick. The town was stressful. Victor was helping with errands. The company needed attention. She said she loved me. But the words began arriving like something copied from an old script. I asked once if something had changed. She cried and told me I was being unfair. "You are gone. Mason," she said. "I am trying to survive here. That sentence made me feel guilty enough to stop asking. A good soldier learns endurance. A foolish man mistakes endurance for love. When my discharge came through, I decided not to tell Claire the exact day I would arrive. I wanted to surprise her. I wanted to walk up the old porch steps, hand her flowers, open the ring box, and ask her to turn 3 years of waiting into the rest of our lives. I took a bus from the airport because my truck was supposed to be parked at the old house. The closer I got to town, the more my chest tightened, not from fear, from hope. Hope is heavier than people admit, especially when you have carried it across deserts, barracks, cold nights, and phone calls that ended too soon. I bought flowers at a gas station outside town. White leaves, Claire's favorite, or at least they used to be. Then I walked the last mile to the Reed house. Music reached me before the house did. At first, I smiled. I thought my family had planned a welcome home party. Then I saw the white ribbons tied to the fence, the rented chairs on the lawn, the string lights wrapped around the old maple trees, the catering van, the flower arch, the guests. My family home had become a wedding venue. I stood at the gate with a duffel bag over one shoulder, flowers in one hand, ring box in my pocket. A cousin saw me first. Her smile died. Then another relative turned. Then another, like a wave moving through the crowd. Faces changed. Laughter dropped. Conversations broke. People looked at me, then at the house, then at the white tent near the back lawn. I knew before I saw her, but knowing did not soften it. Claire stood near the cake table, in a wedding dress. Victor stood beside her, in a dark suit. His hand rested on her lower back. Her left hand wore a ring. Not mine. For a moment, all sound left the world. Then Victor looked up. He was 47. But that day he looked younger because victory makes weak men stand straighter. His hair was combed back. His smile was careful at first, then cruel when he understood I had seen everything before anyone could explain. Claire saw me next. The champagne glass in her hand slipped slightly. Victor caught it before it fell. Even then, he was performing rescue. Mason, she whispered. I walked through the gate. No one stopped me. The guests parted because disaster is gravity. I stopped 10 feet from them. The flowers hung uselessly in my hand. I could feel the ring box pressing against my thigh through my pocket. Victor stepped forward. Mason, he said, voice warm enough for the audience. You made it home. I looked at Claire. She was crying already. Not enough to leave his side. Just enough to make herself look wounded. 2. What is this? I asked. No one answered. Victor did. You should have called before coming. That was his first instinct. Not apology control. Claire finally spoke. I thought you were not coming back. He's still here. I sent you my discharge date. Her face twisted. I never got it. Victor put a hand on her shoulder. That hand told me everything. He wanted the room to see him as her protector, not her thief. An older man began crying near the buffet. Someone muttered that this was terrible timing. Terrible timing. As if I had interrupted a reservation. Victor moved closer and lowered his voice enough to pretend he was being kind, but loud enough for the front tables to hear. You've been gone 3 years. Mason, life did not stop. I looked at him, then at Claire's wedding ring, then at the guests sitting in chairs rented for a wedding at my father's house. Life did not stop. I said, it just stole while I was away. His eyes hardened. Claire flinched. Victor leaned in closer. You are upset. I understand that. But do not embarrass her. That almost made me laugh. I had crossed oceans with her name under my tongue. I had sent money home every month. I had carried a ring through airports and bus stations. And now my uncle was warning me not to embarrass the woman he had married while I served. He stepped even closer. Then he said the line I would remember until the day the case closed. You came back late. Mason, she is your aunt now. Something moved through the crowd. A gasp, a whisper, maybe both. Claire closed her eyes. I did not hit him. That disappointed him. I saw it in his face. Victor wanted a scene. He wanted the angry veteran, the unstable soldier, the humiliated nephew who lost control at a wedding. If I struck him, he would become victim, protector, husband, and family martyr all in one moment. Instead, I placed the flowers on the nearest table. Then I took out my phone. I recorded the arch, the guests, the cake, the marriage display near the gift table, the framed photo of Victor and Claire, and the banner that read, Victor and Claire read. Claire watched me with horror. Victor's smile vanished. "What are you doing?" he asked, remembering accurately. I said, then I turned and walked out through the gate. No one followed at first. That told me how guilty they all were. At the road, I took the ring box from my pocket for a moment. I opened it. The diamond caught the late afternoon light. 3 years of waiting sat inside a box small enough to close with one hand. I closed it. Then I took a picture of the ring, the house, and the wedding tent behind it. First entry evidence. Chapter 2. They wanted me to toast the marriage. I did not leave town that day. That surprised them. Maybe they expected me to disappear like a wounded dog, take my ring and my humiliation to a motel 2 towns over, drink myself numb, and become the kind of story they could control. Poor Mason came back unstable. Poor Mason could not accept that life moved on. Poor Mason caused a scene at the wedding. I gave them none of that. I checked into the Red Pines Motor Inn at the edge of town, the same cheap motel where truckers stopped during snowstorms and traveling salesmen came to die slowly under bad fluorescent lighting. I put my duffel on the bed, placed the ring box on the nightstand, and took out my laptop. Before I slept, I created folders. Wedding transfers, Claire, Victor, house, company, military records, the old part of me, the man who had walked to that house with flowers wanted to collapse. The soldier in me began inventory. At 7:42 that evening, Victor called. I let it ring. At 7:45, Claire called. I stared at her name until it disappeared. At 7:52, my grandmother Nora called. I answered. "Mason," she said, voice shaking. "Where are you?" "In town." "Are you safe?" "Yes." A breath left her. Good. She did not ask if I was okay. Nora Reed was too old and too honest to ask foolish questions. I did not know until it was too late. She said, "What does too late mean?" Silence. I waited. "Victor told us you had stopped writing, that you had chosen to stay in the service, that Claire waited as long as she could." I looked at the ring box. I wrote, "I hoped you had." "Did you ask?" She took a breath that sounded like shame. "No, that hurt. Nora had been the closest thing I had to a living elder worth respecting. If even she had accepted Victor's story, then his groundwork had been careful. They want to have a family breakfast tomorrow." She said, "Who does Victor?" "He says things need be handled calmly." I almost smiled. Of course he did. When 9 at the house, my father's house. She was quiet. "Yes," she said, "your father's house." I arrived at 8:55 the next morning. The wedding decorations were still half up, which felt less like forgetfulness than insult. White ribbons sagged from the fence. Empty champagne glasses sat in crates near the porch. The lawn showed footprints from dancing guests. A crushed rose lay near the steps. Inside, the dining room had been arranged like a family court. Victor sat at the head of the table, my father's seat. Claire sat to his right, pale and swollen-eyed. Her parents, Richard and Elaine Whitman, sat near her. Several Reed relatives filled the rest of the table. Nora sat at the far end, hands folded tightly, watching me with something like grief. A plate had been set for me. That almost made me angrier than the wedding. Victor gestured to it. "Sit down." I remained standing. "I am not here for breakfast." Richard Whitman, Claire's father, clear his throat. He had always been a man who treated money as morality. Victor had apparently given him enough of one to purchase the other. "Mason, yesterday was difficult for everyone." I looked at him. Was it? Ella dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Claire suffered for years. You cannot imagine what it was like for her. I can imagine waiting. I said, "I did it in uniform." Claire flinched. Victor raised one hand. "Enough. This is not about assigning blame." "No," I said. "You assigned it before I came home." One of my cousins muttered, "He is angry." I turned toward him. "Correct. That shut him up." Victor stood taking control of the room the way he always did, by acting as if everyone else's emotions were disorder. You left for 3 years, he said. You sent money. Yes, but money is not presence. Claire needed a husband in real life, not a promise from overseas. Claire whispered, Victor. He ignored her. She cried. In this house. She waited for calls that stopped coming. She believed you had moved on. I did not. You expect us to take your word? I reached into my folder and placed 3 printed pages on the table. Email logs, military mail, receipts, call records. Claire stared at them. Victor's eyes narrowed. I wrote every month. I said, I called whenever I could. Someone made sure she did not receive everything. Victor laughed softly. Now you accuse me. Not yet. The room went quiet. I let the words sit. Then Victor did something smart. He picked up a champagne glass from the sideboard and filled it with orange juice from breakfast. He brought it to me like a peace offering. Whatever happened, the wedding is done. Claire is my wife. We cannot undo it by tearing each other apart for the family's sake. Give us your blessing and let us move forward. A blessing. He wanted me to bless the theft. He held out the glass. Claire began crying again. Nora looked down at her hands. The relatives watched like cowards, waiting to see which side was safer. I took the glass. Victor's eyes flickered with satisfaction. Then I set it untouched on the table. I did not survive 3 years of service to toast a man who used my absence as cover. Victor's face hardened. Richard said, You are making this uglier than it needs to be. No, I am refusing to make it pretty. I took out my phone again and photographed the room. Faces seating. Victor at my father's chair. Claire wearing his ring. The relatives pretending not to understand. Victor stepped toward me. Put that away. No, you will not record in my house. I looked at him. Your house. Silence. There it was. The slip. Victor's expression changed. He recovered quickly. The family house. My father's house. I said the house I sent money to protect. Elaine said, Money is not everything. People usually say that when they are spending someone else's. I turned to Claire. Did you receive the home fund transfers? She wiped her face. Yes, all of them. I think so. Where are they? Her lips parted. Victor answered for her. Used for household needs. Wedding costs. Stability. I looked at him. My money paid for your wedding. He smiled faintly. Our family's money kept this family afloat. That was when I knew the ring was not the only thing stolen. I looked around the table. You all knew I was coming home eventually. No one spoke. You all knew Claire and I were engaged. Still silence. You all knew my money was coming here. Victor said, You do not get to return after 3 years and demand the world reset for you. I picked up my folder. I am not asking the world to reset. I looked at him. I am asking where my money went. That ended breakfast. Victor told me to leave. This time I did not argue. I had what I came for. Admissions, reactions, one slip about the house, and confirmation that the family was aligned against truth. Outside, Nora followed me to the porch. She moved slowly, but her eyes were sharp. Mason, she said, come see me tonight alone. Why? She looked back toward the dining room. Because your father left more than Victor told you. Chapter 3, where my military pay went. The first bank appointment was at 1:00 p.m. By 1:15, I knew Victor had lied. By 20:00, I knew he had stolen. The bank manager was a woman named Elise Porter, someone I vaguely remember from high school. She had changed less than I expected, though now she wore a blazer and spoke with the careful tone of someone who knew family financial disputes could become lawsuits. Before the coffee cooled, I brought identification, military discharge papers, transfer confirmations, and the limited agency document I had signed before deploying. The document gave Victor authority to make payments on my behalf. Mortgage, insurance, taxes, utilities, certain company debt obligations. It did not give him authority to move ownership, take loans in my name, reclassify funds as his personal investment, or redirect money into company accounts he controlled. Elise reviewed the documents slowly. Her eyebrows moved once. That was the first sign. What? I asked. She looked at me, then at the file. Mr. Reed, some of the transfers you made to your uncle were deposited first into the household expense account, but later redirected to Reed Family Transport operating accounts for debt payments. Some. Yes, not all. She printed a summary. I watched the pages come out of the machine. Numbers have a way of making betrayal less deniable, month after month. My military pay had traveled from my account to Victor's control. Some went where it should have. Mortgage borrowers, insurance, repairs. But significant amounts flowed into a company account labeled as capital contribution from Victor Reed. Victor had taken my money, put it into the company, and recorded it as his investment. That meant he was not only stealing cash, he was building ownership claims with it. What about the home fund transfers to Claire Whitman? I asked. Elise pulled another record. Those transfers had gone to Claire's account, but large withdrawals began 6 months earlier. Wedding vendor payments, home renovation deposits, a transfer to a joint account in the names of Victor Reed and Claire Whitman. My stomach tightened. The money I sent for my future with Claire helped pay for her wedding to my uncle. I asked for certified copies. Elise hesitated. You may need a subpoena for some internal documents. I will get one. She looked at my discharge papers. Were you deployed during the dates these documents were signed? Yes. Then you should speak with a lawyer who handles service member financial protection. I am going after this. Her face softened slightly. I figured. From the bank. I went to the local Veteran Services office. It sat in a low brick building near the courthouse with a flag out front and chairs that looked older than most of the men waiting in them. The counselor, a retired Marine named Thomas Grant, listened without interrupting while I explained the wedding, the transfers, the old agency document, and the suspected property changes. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "First thing, you do not confront him alone again. I already did. Do not do it again." I almost smiled. "Yes, sir." He gave me referrals, including one name he circled twice. Rachel Moore. She handles military property fraud, estate disputes, and ugly family cases. He said, "Ugly family cases are their own war." I called her from the parking lot. Rachel answered like she had expected the day to be inconvenient. I gave her the short version. When I said my fiancée had married my uncle while I was deployed, she paused only long enough to say that will not be the worst part. She was right. Her office was above a bookstore downtown. No marble, no performance, just a conference room with clean files and a view of the courthouse. She reviewed my documents for 30 minutes while I sat across from her with the ring box in my jacket pocket. Finally, she looked up. "Your uncle used limited agency as if it were durable power of attorney. That is one problem. He recorded your transfers as his capital contributions. That is another. If he attempted property transfer, that may be fraud. If he intercepted communications, we may have a separate claim. Can I get the house back?" She did not offer false comfort. "Maybe we need the deed history, probate file, your father's will, company records, and the authorization chain. My grandmother says my father left more than Victor told me." Rachel's expression sharpened. "Then see her tonight." I left her office with a document request list, a preservation letter draft, and the first clean feeling I had since walking into the wedding. Not happiness direction. That evening, I went to Nora's small cottage behind the old church. She had moved there after my grandfather died, refusing to live under Victor's management. I used to think she was stubborn. Now I wondered if she had simply been the first to see him clearly. She opened the door before I knocked. "You look like your father when he knew bad news before hearing it," she said. "Then I look accurate." She nodded and let me in. Her house smelled like tea, old wood, and lavender soap. On the kitchen table sat a metal box I had seen once ask. A child, the kind used for deeds and birth certificates. Nora placed a hand on it. "Your father gave me copies," she said. "He said if anything happened, I should keep them until you were ready." Ready for what? To know that Victor was never supposed to control the house. She opened the box. Inside were copies of my father's will, company shareholder documents, and a handwritten letter addressed to me. My hands shook when I saw my father's name. Nora touched my wrist. Read the legal first, the letter later. She was right. The will stated that my father shared a house, and Reed family transport passing me with Victor allowed only temporary operational management if I was unavailable or serving temporary limited, reviewable not ownership. Victor had lied not only to me to the family, to Claire, maybe to himself. I took photos and scanned the documents with a portable app. Nora watched, eyes wet but steady. I should have given these sooner, she said. Why didn't you? Victor said you had changed, that you did not want the burden, that you were making a new life away from us. I looked at her and you believed him. She closed her eyes. I wanted to believe the family was not that rotten. That was an honest answer. Not a good one, but honest. Before I left, she handed me my father's letter. I did not open it until I was back at the motel. Mason, if you were reading this, I am gone, and somebody has made things complicated. I hope it is not your uncle, but if it is, do not let blood make you stupid. A man who shares your name can still steal your future. The house matters because it carries memory. The company matters because it carries work. But neither matters as much as your spine. Keep that straight, Dad. I read the letter twice. Then I placed it beside the ring box on one side. The future I thought I was coming home to on the other. The warning my father left because he understood his brother better than I had. At midnight, I emailed everything to Rachel at 12:07. She replied, "Now we have a case." Chapter 4. Claire said she waited. Claire asked to meet at a coffee shop the next morning. I almost said no. Then Rachel told me to go. Let her talk, she said. Do not accuse more than necessary. Ask questions. Record if your state allows it. It did with one-party consent. So I went. The coffee shop was the same place Claire and I used to visit after church when we were teenagers. Back then, she ordered hot chocolate and stole whipped cream from my cup because she said mine always looked better. Now she sat in the corner, wearing a beige coat, Victor's ring on her finger, and grief on her face like a borrowed veil. I sat across from her for a moment. Neither of us spoke. She looked at me the way people look at a house they once lived in after strangers repainted. You look different, she said. I am different. Her eyes filled. I waited. Mason. I placed my phone face down on the table. Recording. For how long? Her lips trembled. Longer than anyone knows. Tell me. She took a breath. At first, I got your calls, your emails, letters sometimes. Then everything slowed. Victor said communication could be delayed. He said you were in dangerous places. Then he said you had requested extended service. I did not. I know that now. Do you? She looked down at her ring. He told me you were avoiding hard conversations. That some men come back different. That you might not want the same life. And you believed him. I did not want to, but you did. A tear fell onto the table. He was here, she said. You were not. That sentence was the cruelest truth. Victor had built his theft out of presents. He helped repair her car, took her mother to doctor appointments, brought groceries, handled problems with the old house, told everyone he was keeping the family together while I was away with my money and my absence. Did you ever ask to see the records? I asked, what records? Transfers, letters, anything proving what he said? She shook her head slowly. I was afraid of what? That if I looked, I would find out you really had left me. So, you married my uncle instead? She flinched hard. I know how it sounds. No, I said, you know how it is. Her tears kept falling. I thought he saved me from waiting for a ghost. I looked at her across the small table where we once planned ordinary things. Summer trips, kitchen colors, names for children we were too young to have. You married the man who told you I was a ghost. Her face collapsed for a moment. I saw the Claire I had loved. Not innocent, not absolved, but lost. Then I remembered the wedding dress, the ring, the cake, Victor saying, Aunt, did you receive my discharge notice? I asked. No. I emailed it twice. I never saw it. Did you receive the letter I sent 6 months ago about the ring? Her eyes widened. What ring? I did not answer. I did not need to. She covered her mouth. I never got that. I opened my folder and slid printed email logs across the table. Her address, dates, delivery confirmation, no votes. Claire read them with shaking hands. I did not see these. Who had access to your email? No one. I waited. Her face changed. Victor helped set up filters. She whispered when spam messages were getting bad. He said some military scam emails were coming through. There was a door. I asked, did he ever use your laptop? Yes. Phone. Sometimes he helped with bills. Banking. She looked sick. I sat back. Claire was not innocent. I would not make her innocent just because Victor was worse. She had chosen comfort over verification. She had accepted a story that let her stop waiting without confronting me. But Victor had built a story that mattered legally. It did not heal the betrayal emotionally. Claire reached across the table. I moved my hand away. She stopped. Mason, she whispered, if I had known, you could have known. She closed her eyes. That sentence landed where it needed to. Outside, a truck passed the coffee shop window, rattled softly. I asked one more question. When did you marry him? Her face went pale. 2 months ago, while I was still serving. Yes. Did he tell you I had already moved on? Yes. Did you ask me? No. There it was. The whole marriage in one word. No. I stood. She rose too quickly. Please, she said. What I do now? I looked at her ring. Start by finding every message Victor told you not to worry about. And us? There is no us. She cried harder. He was lied to. Yes. I picked up my folder. But you chose without asking me the truth. That was the line I would not cross for her. Before leaving, I said, Rachel may need your cooperation. Your lawyer? Yes. Against Victor. Against anyone who stole from me. She understood. Her ring hand curled into a fist. As I walked out, my phone buzzed. Daniel Hayes, my old Army friend, had replied to the email I sent him at dawn. Daniel had moved into cybersecurity after discharge. I had asked if deleted or filtered emails could be traced. His message was short. If the account still exists, there's always a trail. For the first time since coming home, I felt the fight expand beyond pain. Victor had not just stolen my bride. He had touched systems, and systems remember. Chapter 5. They told me to call her Aunt Claire. The family meeting happened at the old house on Sunday. Victor called it a reconciliation gathering. That was bold considering nothing had reconciled except his confidence and everyone else's cowardice. I went because Rachel wanted witness behavior documented, and because Nora insisted the family needed to hear the will read aloud before Victor buried it under more lies. This time I did not arrive alone. Rachel came with me. So did Daniel Hayes, who had driven in overnight after I sent him the email logs. He was tall, quiet, and carried himself like a man who had learned civilian clothes do not remove military habits. He did not speak unless necessary, which made everyone more nervous. Victor noticed him immediately. Who is this? He asked from the dining room doorway. Witness. I said. Victor's smile thinned. This is a private family matter. Then you should not have stolen from family. Claire was in the dining room already. She looked exhausted. Her ring was still on, but she kept twisting it like it burned. Her parents sat beside her. Reed relatives filled the chairs. Nora sat near the fireplace with a folder in her lap. Victor took the head of the table again. My father's place. Not for long. A gray-haired cousin named Malcolm opened with the usual coward's prayer. We all want peace. No, Rachel said before I could. My client wants records. Peace can wait. The room shifted. Victor looked at her. And you are Rachel Moore, counsel for Mason Reed. Elaine Whitman whispered something to Richard. Victor leaned back. Mason brought a lawyer to a family meeting. I said, you brought my fiancée to your wedding. That shut him up for 3 seconds. Then Malcolm, trying to restore order, said the sentence that made the whole room reveal itself. Mason, whatever happened before, Claire is Victor's wife now, for the family's sake. You need to accept that she is your Aunt Claire. Aunt Claire, the phrase entered the room and died there. Claire flinched like someone had struck her. Victor smiled faintly. I looked at Malcolm, then at the others. You want me to call the woman I was engaged to before deployment my aunt, because my uncle married her while intercepting my money and possibly my mail? Malcolm's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Rachel placed a recorder on the table. We are in a one-party consent state, she said calmly. Continue if you like. No one continued. Nora stood slowly. She was small, but the room changed when she moved. She had been the oldest Reed alive for years. And even Victor had to respect the family memory she carried. Your father did not leave this house to Victor, she said to me loud enough for everyone. Victor's face hardened. Mother, no, she said. You have used that word long. Enough. She handed Rachel the folder. Rachel removed copies of the will, shareholder documents, and temporary management instructions. She laid them on the table one by one. The documents indicate, Rachel said, that Mason Reed is the primary beneficiary of his father's house interest and controlling inheritance rights tied to Reed family transport. Victor Reed's authority was temporary and limited. Victor stood. Those are outdated. Rachel looked up, then provided the updated versions. They are with company counsel. Excellent. We will subpoena them. He sat back down slowly. The first crack. I watched Claire read the documents. Her lips parted. Victor, you said Mason signed over control. I said he did not want the burden. That is not the same. He turned toward her. You do not understand business. There it was, the voice beneath the rescue. Claire went still. Rachel continued. We also have concerns regarding bank transfers from Mason's military pay being recorded as capital contributions by Victor Reed. A few relatives began whispering. Victor snapped. That money kept this place alive. My money, I said. You sent it to me for bills, not ownership. You were gone. I was serving. The distinction hit the room harder than I expected. Gone sounded like abandonment. Serving sounded like duty. Victor had spent years making the first word replace the second. Daniel opened his laptop and connected it to the dining room television without asking permission. He displayed a simple timeline. Mason's deployment dates, monthly transfers, email delivery confirmations, CLA's account filter changes, property document dates, company capital reclassification dates. Then he highlighted one entry, an email forwarding rule added to CLA's account 9 months earlier, forwarding certain messages from my military domain to an external address. Victor's assistant's office account. Claire stared at the screen. Victor said, that is fabricated. Daniel did not look at him. No, just one word. Cold and final. The room went quiet. Rachel said, we are requesting full forensic access voluntarily. If refused, we will seek court order. Richard Whitman finally spoke. Victor, did you hide communications? Victor's face turned red. I protected Claire from false hope. Claire stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. False hope? There it was. Not denial, just justification. You told me he stopped writing, she said. He was not here. He was writing. He was building a life without you. I reached into my jacket and placed the ring box on the table. Everyone stared. I opened it. The diamond caught the dull dining room light. I bought this before I came home. I said, for her. Claire covered her mouth. Victor's eyes locked on the ring. Then on me, for the first time. I saw fear not of losing Claire, of losing the story. I closed the box. But this meeting is not about getting Claire back. Her face twisted. It is about what you stole while pretending to protect everyone. Victor stood again. This is my house. Nora's voice cut through the room. No, Victor, it was your brother's and you knew it. No one defended him after that. Not openly. That was when the power shifted. Not fully, but enough. As we left, Claire followed me to the porch. I will help, she said. I looked at her. Help with what? The emails, the files, whatever he hid. Good. Hope flickered in her eyes. I killed it cleanly. That does not change us. She swallowed. I know, but she did not know yet. Not really. People often think truth is a bridge back. Sometimes it is only a road out. Chapter 6. The signature that could not be mine. The forged signature was almost insulting. That was what angered me most at first. Not only that Victor had forged my name, but that he had done it badly because he assumed no one would ever check. The letters were too round. The pressure was uneven. He had copied the shape of my name from an old driver's license scan and missed the way my hand cuts through the final D. Rachel found the document at the county recorder's office. It was tied to an attempted transfer of expanded control over the old house and an operating rights amendment for Reed Family Transport. According to the notarized file, I had appeared in person 14 months earlier to grant Victor broader authority. 14 months earlier, I had been at a forward logistics base overseas. I had not been in the United States. I had not signed anything. The notary record included a scan of identification, a signature page, and a timestamp. Rachel looked at the timestamp and smiled in a way that made me grateful she was on my side. Do you have military location verification for that date? Yes. Good. Daniel helped retrieve deployment activity records, base access logs, and a command letter confirming my location. The Army may move slowly in many things, but it loves records. The date Victor claimed I signed in person. I had been logged into a secure facility 6,000 me away. We placed the documents side by side on Rachel's conference room screen. Forged signature. Base verification. Notary timestamp. Passport record showing no entry. Rachel tapped the screen. This is no longer a family misunderstanding. I know. No. Mason, I need you to hear it clearly. This is potential felony fraud. I looked at my name on the document. My own name had been used like a stolen key. What happens now? We file for emergency injunction on property and company control. We notify the title insurer. We subpoena the notary. We put Victor under pressure from multiple directions. And Claire, Rachel paused. What about her? She married him based on his lies. She also married him without confirming yours. I looked away. Rachel did not soften her voice. I am not your emotional advisor, but legally, do not let sympathy for Claire weaken the record. Her cooperation helps. Her regret does not erase harm. I know. Good. Keep knowing. That afternoon, we went to Reed Family Transport. The company office sat near the highway, a low building with a gravel lot, 6 trucks, and a sign my father painted himself 20 years earlier. I had spent summers washing those trucks as a teenager. My father used to say the company was not big, but it was honest. Victor had made it neither. Inside, employees looked nervous when I arrived with Rachel and Daniel. They had all heard pieces by then. Small towns do not keep secrets. They only hold them until they become useful. Greg Palmer, the financial manager, tried to avoid us. Rachel did not let him. Greg was 50, soft around the middle with the damp forehead of a man whose conscience had been sweating for years. He had worked for my father. That made his betrayal harder to swallow. Rachel placed the transfer records on his desk. Mr. Palmer, we need financial classifications for all funds received from Mason Reed during his military service. Greg swallowed. You should talk to Victor. We are talking to you. I only recorded what I was told. Then tell us what you were told. He looked at me. I said nothing. Silence works when guilt is already inside the room. Greg finally opened a drawer and removed a folder. I kept copies. Rachel's eyes sharpened. Why? Greg's hand shook. Because your dad was good to me. And because Victor told me to classify Mason's transfers as his capital injection. I knew it was wrong. My jaw tightened. Then why do it? Greg looked down. Victor said if I did not, the company would close and everyone would lose jobs. Did he mention he was using my money? Greg whispered. Yes. The room went cold. Rachel took the folder. Inside were internal memos, reclassification entries, emails from Victor, and draft financial statements showing my transfers listed under Victor's equity support. It was worse than theft. It was identity replacement. Victor had used my absence, my money and my name to make himself look like the man holding the family together. No wonder Claire believed him. No one of the family sat him at my father's chair. He had purchased moral authority with my paychecks. I asked Greg, "Did you know about Claire?" He looked miserable. I knew they were close. I did not know he would marry her. That answer was probably true. It did not help. Rachel said, "We will need a sworn statement." Greg nodded quickly. Too quickly. A man choosing the side he should have chosen years earlier because the cost of staying with Victor had finally become higher outside. I stood near one of the trucks and placed my hand on the hood. The metal was warm from the sun. My father used to say, trucks remember their drivers. Every scratch, every dent, every repaired panel told a story of work done, roads taken, burdens carried. This company remembered him. It remembered me. It would remember Victor differently. My phone rang. "Victor." I answered. His voice came sharp and low. "You went to my office." "My father's company. You are tearing apart everything he built. You used my money to pretend you built it. You have no idea what it took to keep things alive while you played soldier." The phrase landed. Played soldier. I looked at the company lot. The trucks. The flag near the office door. I was not playing. You abandoned us. I funded you. You think a few transfers make you a man? No. I said stealing them makes you a fraud. He went silent. Then he said, "Careful. Mason." Too late. I ended the call. That evening, Rachel filed for emergency injunction. By morning, the court scheduled a hearing. Victor had spent 3 years using my absence. Now, he had to face my records. Chapter 7. I stopped paying their debts. The first thing I stopped was the automatic transfer. It had run for 3 years without missing a month. Military pay to Victor's managed account, mortgage support, company debt, insurance, household maintenance. The line item had become so normal that I almost forgot it was still active after discharge. Rachel did not forget. "Turn it off," she said. I did. No ceremony. No angry message. Just login. Authentication. Cancel recurring transfer. Confirm. A small digital action. A large physical consequence. The second transfer went to the account Claire used for the home fund. That one was harder. Not because I doubted the decision, but because the label still said home fund. The account name was a ghost. I changed the label to close commitment and stopped the scheduled payment. Then I downloaded every statement. Within 2 hours, Victor called. I did not answer. Within 3, Reed Family Transport's lender emailed a notice that the next loan payment had failed pre-clearance because the expected support transfer was not in place. Within 4, Greg sent Rachel a message saying Victor was in the office shouting. Within 5, Claire called. I answered because her voice might contain information. "Mason," she said. Panicked. "Victor says you froze company money." I stopped sending mine. "He says trucks will be repossessed. Then he should use the capital contributions he claimed were his." She went quiet. That sentence carried the truth deeper than any explanation. "He told me you were trying to destroy the company out of jealousy. Jealousy does not forge signatures." "I know. Do you?" "Yes." Her voice was smaller now, less defensive, more afraid, not of me, of the man she had married. "He is angry," she said. "I assumed," he said, "you are using the army to make yourself look noble." I looked at the transfer confirmation on my screen. "Claire Iyer, why did you call?" She was silent for a moment. Then she said, "I found letters." My hand stilled. "Where?" "In a lockbox in his closet. Some were yours. Some from the army. Your discharge notice. The one about coming home. The room seemed to narrow. Did you take them?" "Yes." "Do not give them back." "I will not scan them. Send copies to Rachel." I already started. That surprised me. Maybe she was learning. Maybe fear had finally made her honest. Then she asked the question I expected and dreaded. "Did you really buy a ring?" I looked toward the motel nightstand where the box still sat. "Yes." She began to cry. "I never knew. You could have." I know that answer was better than excuses. Still not enough. Send the letters. I said I will. I hung up before grief could become conversation. The injunction hearing happened 2 days later. Victor arrived in a dark suit with a lawyer, who looked irritated to have inherited a family mess with criminal edges. Claire sat behind him, not beside him. That mattered. Her parents sat farther back, faces tight. Nora came with me along with Rachel and Daniel. The judge reviewed the preliminary record. Documents, limited agency, bank transfers, company reclassifications, alleged in-person notarized authorization, military location proof, intercepted communications. Rachel spoke cleanly. Victor's lawyer argued that family business arrangements were informal, that Victor had acted to preserve assets, that I had been unavailable, that no final harm had occurred. Rachel let him finish. Then she displayed the forged signature beside my military location record. The courtroom changed. Judges see family arguments every day. They hear siblings, spouses, parents, children, business partners, all claiming betrayal. But a signature dated to a day when the signer was verifiably overseas cuts through noise. The judge granted temporary restrictions. Victor could not transfer, encumber, sell, or alter ownership positions in the house or company. Certain company accounts required dual oversight. Records had to be preserved. A forensic accounting review was ordered. Victor stood too quickly. Your Honor, this was a business. The judge looked at him over her glasses. Then you should welcome a review, proving your management was clean. Victor sat down. He looked older, not ruined, not yet, but exposed to a light he could not control. Outside the courtroom, he came toward me. Rachel stepped slightly in front of me. Victor smiled bitterly, still hiding behind a lawyer. I looked at him. No, standing behind records. Claire approached before he could answer. Her hand was bare. No ring. Victor saw it at the same time I did. His face darkened. Put it back on. Claire did not move. The command told me more than any confession. She had not married safety. She had married control, wearing safety's coat. Victor stepped toward her. Claire, I said, careful. He turned on me. She is my wife. She was my fiancée before you built a marriage out of blocked emails and stolen pay. People nearby slowed. Victor saw them, watching again. He wanted me angry again. I did not give it. Claire whispered, Victor, stop. He looked at her with pure fury. That was the first time I saw her truly afraid of him, not uncertain. Afraid. I did not comfort her. But I noticed that afternoon I sent formal notices to the bank, the lender, the title insurer, and the transport company's major clients. Not accusations beyond the record. Just notice that ownership and authority were under legal review and that unauthorized erections from Victor should be treated cautiously. By evening, Victor's control had begun shrinking, not because I took it with force, because the paperwork he had abused finally turned around and faced him. Chapter 8. The ring was not hers anymore. I took the ring to the jeweler on a rainy Tuesday. The shop was small, family-owned, and quiet enough that the bell above the door sounded too loud when I entered. The same older man who sold me the ring recognized me immediately. His name was Peter. He had helped me choose the diamond, listened to me talk about Claire, and told me that patient love deserved a clean setting. Now I placed the box on the counter. His face changed before he opened it. Did she say no? He asked gently. I almost laughed. No, she married my uncle while I was deployed. Peter stared at me. Then he closed the box without inspecting the ring. I am sorry, he said. Simple. No advice. No questions. That made it easier to breathe. I do not know what to do with it. I admitted. You do not have to decide today. I thought I did. No, Peter said. A ring can wait better than people. That sentence stayed with me. I left the ring there for appraisal. Not sale. Not yet. Maybe part of me needed the object out of the motel room. Maybe I wanted to stop measuring my grief by the weight of a velvet box. Either way, walking out without it felt strange. Lighter. Painfully lighter. Claire called as I reached my truck. I found more, she said. Her voice shook. What? Your letters? All of them. I think some opened, some not. A copy of your discharge date. A receipt for something from a jewelry store. She stopped. I looked back at the shop window. Where are you? At the house. His house. I mean, she could not finish. What else? There's a folder with your name, copies of your transfer receipts, a draft letter saying you authorized Victor to use the home fund for family stabilization. It has your signature, but it looks wrong. Photograph everything. I am. Do not confront him. Too late. In the background, a door slammed. Claire inhaled sharply. Victor's voice came through the phone, muffled, but clear enough. What are you doing in my office? Claire whispered. Mason. The call cut. I was already in my truck. Rachel told me not to confront Victor alone again. I called Daniel first, then Rachel, then drove to Victor's house, which had once belonged to an older Reed cousin before Victor acquired it under circumstances I now intended to review. When I arrived, Claire was on the front porch with a duffel bag and a red mark on her wrist. Victor stood in the doorway. He smiled when he saw me. Here comes a hero. Daniel arrived behind me in his own truck. Victor's smile faded slightly. I looked at Claire. Are you hurt? She shook her head. He grabbed me. I am fine. Victor scoffed. She was stealing documents from my private office. Rachel's voice came through my phone on speaker. If those documents concern Mason Reed's property, communications, or financial records, preserve them. Victor, I advise you not to destroy or alter anything. Victor's face twisted. You have your lawyer on the phone. Yes, I said, and your soldier friend. Witness. Claire clutched the duffel. I am leaving, she said to Victor. He laughed. You have nowhere to go. She flinched. That was the line that broke the last illusion. Not for me. For her. Victor had stopped sounding like the man who rescued her from waiting. He sounded like a man who thought rescue created ownership. I stepped forward only enough to take the duffel from Claire. Victor pointed at me. Do not touch my wife. Claire removed the wedding ring from her finger. Her hand shook as she held it out toward him. I do not know what I am to you anymore, she said, but I know I am not safe. Victor's face went white with rage for 1 second. I thought he might hit her. Daniel moved closer. Victor saw him. He stepped back again. Force was not needed, only witnesses. Claire came down the porch steps. She did not reach for me. Good. I would not have taken her hand. We drove to Nora's cottage, where Claire could stay temporarily, because Nora said no woman should sleep under a roof with a man who used documents like chains. That night, Claire gave Rachel scans of everything. Hidden letters, filtered emails, draft forge authorization, transfer copies, my discharge notice, a copy of the jewelry store receipt. When she handed that one to me, she could not look at my face. I would have said yes. She whispered. I believed her. That was a tragedy. She would have said yes if she had been given the ring before Victor taught her to doubt the man holding it. But belief did not rebuild trust. I folded the receipt and placed it in the file. Truth is useful, I said, but it is not a time machine. She cried silently. Nora sat beside her, one hand on her shoulder. I left before sympathy could become confusion. The next morning, Peter from the jewelry store called. The ring is in excellent condition, he said. I can sell it on consignment if you choose. I looked at the new evidence folder on my motel desk. Not yet, I said, not because I was waiting for Claire, because some endings deserve to wait until the truth is complete. Chapter 9. My uncle lost the company room by room. Victor tried to remove me from Reed Family Transport before the forensic accounting report finished. That was his last strategic mistake. He called an emergency management meeting, claiming the legal uncertainty was damaging operations and that I, as a newly discharged soldier with no current management role, should be formally excluded from company premises until the court resolved ownership. It was clever in an old-fashioned way. If he could make me look disruptive, he could argue that his continued control was necessary to protect jobs. But Victor still did not understand the new battlefield. He thought the meeting room belonged to the loudest man. It belonged to the best records. I arrived with Rachel Daniel and a court order allowing my counsel access to company documents. Greg Palmer was already seated near the end of the table, sweating through his shirt. Several supervisors sat along the sides. Drivers had gathered near the glass wall outside, pretending not to watch. Victor sat at the head of the table again, always stealing seats. He opened with a speech about stability, loyalty, and the danger of personal vendettas. He spoke about how he had carried the company while I was away. He said he respected my service. But that service did not automatically qualify me to run a business. That line was meant to sound reasonable. It might have worked if Rachel had not gone next. She connected her laptop to the conference screen. First slide, my father's will. Second, temporary management instructions. Third, limited agency document. Fourth, transfer records. Fifth, company ledger showing my payments recorded as Victor's contributions. Sixth, forge authorization. Seventh, military location proof. The room changed slide by slide. Employees who had looked bored began sitting straighter. Supervisors exchanged glances. Greg looked like he might faint. Victor interrupted. This is selective. Rachel said, then provide the complete records. He looked at Greg. Greg did not look back. Rachel asked, Mr. Palmer, did Victor Reed instruct you to classify Mason Reed's transfers as Victor Reed capital contributions? Greg swallowed. Victor said, Greg, be careful. Rachel turned slightly. That sounded like witness intimidation. Victor's lawyer placed a hand on his arm. Greg whispered, Yes, louder, please. Yes, Greg said. He told me to classify them that way. The room went silent. Did you know those funds came from Mason Reed's military pay? Yes. Did Victor Reed know? Greg's eyes flicked to Victor. Then he said, Yes. Victor stood. He is lying to save himself. Greg pulled a folder from his bag. I have emails. Rachel accepted them. Victor's face shifted from rage to something closer to panic. Drivers outside the glass began murmuring. One of the supervisors, a woman named Carla, who had worked dispatch for 15 years, spoke up. So Mason was paying the bills. No one answered. Carla looked at me. You were the money behind the company while Victor told us he was saving it. I said, that appears to be the record. Victor shouted, I kept your jobs with his money. Greg said quietly. Victor turned on him. That was when he lost the room. Not legally. Emotionally. People can forgive a lot in a family business. Bad years. Hard decisions. Late checks. Debt restructuring. But they do not forgive being made part of a lie that steals from a deployed soldier while using his money to claim hero status. Rachel announced that we would seek expanded injunction and temporary oversight of company accounts. Victor's lawyer requested a recess. Daniel collected copies of the new emails. Greg agreed to give a sworn statement. Victor left through the back door. He could no longer walk to the front without passing the drivers. That mattered. After the meeting, Carla stopped me in the parking lot. Your dad was a good man, she said. I know he never fully trusted Victor. I know that now. She nodded toward the building. Do not let him bury the company. People here still care. I am not here to bury it. What are you here to do? I looked at the old company sign. Dig it out. That was the first time I understood I might actually keep Reed Family Transport. Not because I wanted Victor's chair. Because my father's work deserved better than to be used as camouflage for theft. Later that day, Claire called. I heard about the meeting, she said. Small town. Greg confessed. Yes, she was quiet. I keep thinking about every time Victor said he was holding things together. He was holding stolen rope. She gave a broken laugh that turned into a sob. I am filing to annul or divorce him. My lawyer says annulment may be hard, but we can use fraud as part of the case. Good. I am not telling you because I expect anything. Good. A pause. Then she said, I want to testify if it helps. It will, but you still will not come back. No. She breathed out shakily. I know. This time I believe she knew a little more. Chapter 10. Claire learned who she married. The court granted expanded restrictions on Victor 2 weeks after the company meeting. He could not control company accounts alone. He could not enter into contract above a low threshold. He could not transfer house interests. He could not destroy or remove records. He had to surrender certain documents to the forensic accountant. He called it betrayal. That word from him almost made me laugh. The hearing was shorter than expected because the evidence had become too heavy for Victor's lawyer to lift. Forged signature, military location proof, financial reclassification, Greg's statement, email forwarding records, hidden letters, Claire's testimony that Victor misrepresented my intentions. Claire sat 2 rows behind me. No wedding ring. Her face looked pale but steady. Victor refused to look at her until the judge mentioned the hidden communications. Then he turned, eyes full of blame, as if her decision to tell the truth had hurt him more than his lies had hurt everyone else. That was when Claire finally saw him clearly, not as rescuer, not as substitute, not as the man who stayed, as the man who needed her ignorance to hold his life together. After court, Victor confronted her near the hallway vending machines. I was 10 feet away with Daniel. "You ruined me," Victor said. Claire stood very still. "No," she replied. "I believed you. That helped you ruin yourself." His face twisted. "You think Mason will take you back?" "He will not. He just wants to use you as a witness." I started toward them, but Daniel caught my arm. "Let her answer." Claire's voice shook, but she did answer. "I know he will not take me back." Victor blinked. "But at least he is honest about what I lost." She walked away from him for once. Not toward me, toward herself. That mattered. That evening, she came to the motel. Rain had started, soft and steady, making the parking lot shine under the yellow lights. I opened the door after she knocked. She stood there holding an envelope. "I will not come in," she said. "Okay." I brought copies. "My lawyer has the originals." She handed me the envelope. Inside were more letters, including one I had written after a convoy accident I never told her about in detail. In it, I had said I was scared, but thinking of coming home to her made fear feel temporary. Claire had never read it. Victor had. She said, "I found that one in his desk." I looked at the envelope. "Some thefts cannot be measured in money. He stole years." She whispered, "Yes, and I helped him." I did not answer. She needed to stand inside that sentence without me softening it. She continued, "I am leaving town for a while, staying with my aunt. I cannot be near him, and I should not be near you. That is wise." Pain crossed her face, but she nodded. "I need to ask one thing before I go." I waited. If I had known, if I had gotten the letters, if I had seen the ring, would we have had a chance? That question was a trap made of grief, not intentional, but still a trap. I could have said yes and given her a ghost to live with. I could have said no and made myself colder than the truth. The honest answer was harder. "We had a chance before you chose without asking me." I said. She closed her eyes. "I understand. Do you?" "I am starting to." She looked at me one last time. "I loved you. I know you loved me." "Yes." "And it is still over." "Yes." The rain filled the silence between us. She nodded, then walked away. I watched until she reached her car safely. Then I closed the door, not because I did not care, because caring had to stop making decisions. Chapter 11. She asked for a beginning after the ending. Victor's case moved in stages. Civil first. Criminal possibility later. Rachel said, patience mattered now. The court would not move at the speed of my anger. Forensic accounting took time. Title review took time. Company restructuring took time. Fraud cases were built brick by brick, not swung like hammers. I hated that, but I understood it. In the meantime, I worked. I moved from the motel into a small apartment near the company office. Not the old house. Not yet. The house was still legally tangled and emotionally worse. I spent mornings with Daniel reviewing digital evidence, afternoons at Reed Family Transport learning the current operations, and evenings reading my father's old files. He had been better at this than I knew. The company was small, but the routes were solid. The clients liked the drivers. The trucks needed maintenance, but not replacement. Victor had used crisis language to justify control, but underneath the fraud, the business could survive. I began showing up at 600 M, The drivers noticed at first they called me Sergeant as a joke, then less as a joke. I did not correct them. There were worse things to be called. Carla helped me understand dispatch. Greg, under legal supervision, helped reconstruct the books. He looked like a man trying to earn back a conscience, one spreadsheet at a time. Victor was barred from daily operations while the review continued. He hated that most. He had stolen the company not only for money, but for audience without the office, without the chair, without employees needing his approval. He became smaller. One evening, Claire returned to town and asked me at the old bridge where we used to walk in high school. I almost refused. Rachel said if you go, keep it short as she offers testimony, accept documents, not promises. Daniel said, not go if you are tired. I went anyway. The old bridge crossed a narrow river just outside town. We had carved our initials under the rail when we were 17. I checked when I arrived. They were still there, faint but visible. M+C, a monument to people who no longer existed. Claire stood near the center of the bridge in a dark coat. Her hair was shorter. She looked older than she had at the wedding, though only weeks had passed. I filed, she said, for divorce. Yes, annulment may not be possible, but my lawyer is trying to argue fraud. Good. I also gave a statement about the emails and letters. Rachel told me. She nodded. Then came the real reason. I know you said there is no us. I looked at the river. But I need to say this once without Victor. Between us. Without my parents. Without lawyers. Say it. She inhaled. I should have asked you. I should have demanded proof before believing him. I should have waited until I heard your voice say you were gone. I was lonely and he was present, and I let that become truth. The wind moved across the bridge. I know I cannot undo it. She continued. I know giving you letters now does not return 3 years. But I also know that part of me still waits for the man I thought I lost. I looked at her then. Tears stood in her eyes. But she did not reach for me. That helped. That man came home. I said, you were married. She covered her mouth briefly. I know. The ring I carried was for a woman who believed me before believing Victor. She nodded through tears. I am not her anymore. No. Could I become someone you might know again? There it was. Not a demand. Not exactly hope. But a door offered carefully. I wanted to be kind. Kindness required clarity. No. I said. She broke. But quietly. I continued. You may become someone better. I hope you do. But not for me. She looked down at the carved initials. Do you hate me? No. Do you forgive me? Not yet. Will you? I do not know. She nodded slowly. That is fair. We stood there for a moment longer. Then she removed a small envelope from her coat. One more thing. Victor kept this too. Inside was a photograph. Me and my father beside one of the company trucks. I was 19, sunburned, grinning, holding a wrench like an idiot. On the back, my father had written, Mason will run this better than either of us. I had never seen it. My throat tightened. Claire said, I thought you should have it. Thank you. She walked away first this time. I stayed on the bridge until her car disappeared. Then I looked at the carved initials one last time. I did not scratch them out. I did not need to. Time would do that. Chapter 12. The ring never became a promise. The final hearing was 6 months after I came home. By then, everything looked different. Victor looked smaller in the courtroom than he had at the wedding. Without the old house, the lawn, the champagne glass, the family gathered around him. He was just a man in an expensive suit facing documents he could not charm. The court confirmed the forged authorization was invalid. The property transfer failed. The old house and my father's share of Reed family transport were restored to my control pending final estate corrections. Victor was ordered to repay him classified funds and face referral for further investigation over forgery and financial fraud. The criminal side would take longer, but civilly he lost. Greg's statement held. The bank records held. The military records held. The emails held. Records do not heal the heart, but they can drag truth into rooms where liars prefer emotion. Claire attended the hearing, but sat on the opposite side from Victor. Her divorce case was separate, but his fraud findings strengthened her claim. Her parents looked humiliated. Richard Whitman avoided my eyes. Elaine looked like someone angry that reality had become unfashionable. Nora sat beside me. When the judge finished, she took my hand and squeezed once. My father's house was mine again. The company was not fully safe yet, but it was no longer Victor's mask. Outside the courthouse, Victor tried one final performance. He stood near the steps as reporters from the local paper gathered, drawn by the family name, the veteran angle, and the ugly simplicity of a man stealing from his deployed nephew. Victor looked at me and said, "You destroyed your own blood." I stopped for the first time since the wedding. I allowed myself to answer him in front of everyone. "No," I said. "I came home and found out what my blood had already done." He had no reply, not one that mattered. Claire approached after he left. Her hands were bare. No ring, no envelope, no plea. "I'm glad you got the house back," she said. "Thank you. Your father would be proud." "I hope so." She looked toward the courthouse doors. "I leave tomorrow." "Where?" "Portland. My aunt has a clinic there. I found administrative work. I need to become someone outside this town." That was the first future she had mentioned. That did not include me. I was glad. "I hope you do," I said. She smiled sadly. "I know you will not ask me to stay." "No, I know you should not." I said nothing. She wiped one tear quickly, then offered her hand, not for romance, for goodbye. I took it. Her hand was familiar. That hurt. Then I let go. 2 weeks later, I moved into the old house. Not immediately. I had workers clean at first. The wedding decorations were long gone, but memory leaves residue. I repainted the dining room. I replaced the lock on my father's study. I moved Victor's furniture into storage and brought back what pieces of my father's I could find. In the study, I hung the photograph Claire had given me. Mason will run this better than either of us. Below it, I placed my discharge certificate, not as decoration, as proof that service had not erased my place here. Reed family transport took months to stabilize. I did not pretend to know everything. I listened to Carla. I led Daniel build secure record systems. I kept Greg under oversight but allowed him to work because his cooperation saved jobs and because punishment without purpose becomes vanity. Eventually, the company breathed again. We shifted part of the old warehouse into a training program for veterans transitioning into logistics work, truck maintenance, dispatch systems, compliance, route planning, practical skills, steady work. A place for men and women coming home to something less broken than I found. I named the program after my father, the Reed Veterans Logistics Initiative. Nora cried at the sign unveiling. I almost did, too. The ring stayed at Peter's jewelry shop for nearly a year. One day, I went back. Peter brought it out without asking too many questions. Still perfect, still useless as the promise I bought it for. "I can sell it," he said. I looked at the diamond. For a long time, I thought selling it would feel like betrayal. Then I realized keeping it had become a shrine to a life that no longer existed. "Sell it," I said. "What should I do with the proceeds?" I already knew. Put it into the Veterans Program Fund. Peter smiled softly. That is a good place for a ring. He was right. The diamond never touched Claire's hand. It became training grants, licensing fees, work boots, and exam payments for veterans learning to build lives after service. That felt more like a promise than marriage ever had. A year after coming home, I stood on the porch of my father's house at sunrise. Trucks moved in the yard beyond the trees. The air smelled like cold grass and diesel. Nora's lights were on at her cottage somewhere down the road. The town was waking up, carrying its gossip, its shame, its revised stories. People still talked about the wedding. They talked about Victor's fall. They talked about Claire leaving. They talked about me, too. Some with sympathy, some with respect, some with resentment, because consequences make cowards uncomfortable. I did not care as much as I used to. I had come home expecting to receive a life that waited for me. Instead, I found a lie wearing a wedding dress. I lost Claire. I lost the fantasy of family. I lost a version of myself that believed loyalty would be returned simply because it was given. But I recovered my father's house. I recovered the company. I recovered the money I could trace. Most importantly, I recovered the part of myself that Victor wanted broken, the part that could stand in a room full of betrayal and choose discipline over collapse. The ring never became a promise. The records did.